Hey everyone, Attorney Davis Yance here. Listen, this is day 5 in our series about the book Living for Leadership, this Air Force guidebook from the 1950s. And what I want to talk about today, so I just want to summarize kind of what we've learned, what we've talked about through this series. And I want to talk about why I think this book matters so much now and what we can learn from it. So listen, we know that this book was written in the 1950s. It was seen as a critical piece in teaching Air Force officers how to become the leaders our military needed to defeat communism. And it encapsulated and incorporated so much of American history, tradition, even talking about the Constitution and our oath, all of these concepts and ideas, maybe at a high level, maybe at a 30,000 foot overview. But the fact that these principles are there, I mean, this is an Air Force training manual, an Air Force guidebook that's quoting G.K. Chesterton, that has pictures of the 10 Commandments in it, that's talking about these principles and ideas that made America great. And I'll submit to you that this kind of mentality, this kind of training is what enabled the United States to defeat communism, to defeat the Soviet Union and bring down the destruction of the Berlin Wall. Now, listen, time moves quickly. We're now decades removed from the fall of the Berlin Wall, but I remember watching the Berlin Wall come down, and I remember thinking how miraculous that seemed, how incredible that was after living through the 80s in fear, really constant fear of the potential of nuclear war, and just realizing that because the United States had stood strong, not perfect, never perfect in a fallen world, but it stood strong on basic principles founded in scripture, founded on God's law, what our founders believed in, that resulted in an American system that could actually have freedom and could actually produce a military that could defeat the evils of communism and the evils of science divorced from biblical law and divorced from natural law. So just a fascinating thing to take time to think about why it was we were able to defeat communism, why it was we were able as a nation to overcome the Soviet Union, and what that means for our future. Now, keep in mind, there were moments and times in the 80s. There were moments and times, the Russians had the first satellite in the air. They had a manned space flight. They had all of these technological things. And it was often a perception, at least for me, that we were in constant fear of losing the arms race to communism and really losing our freedom to communism. That was the fear and concern. But ultimately, it was freedom. It was ideals based on biblical principles that overcame the evil of communism. And so I don't think we should forget that. The outcome of this Cold War that we faced then was never certain. It was always hanging in the balance, and it took character and courage. Men like Ronald Reagan, women like Margaret Thatcher, to come forward, to take a bold stand, and to call evil evil. And ultimately, that's what it took to win the Cold War. So I think we can ask ourselves now, what is it going to take to win back these principles, to win back our nation to a place where freedom is flourishing and where our military is actually the strongest in the world and is filled with leaders and officers at all levels that are people of character, that actually understand our Constitution, that actually understand the biblical principles that made this nation great. And we can pretend that we haven't indoctrinated the military. But the truth is, from government schools, through universities, through our own military training programs, again, and it got a lot worse under Obama and then Biden, many of our military leaders have been indoctrinated to believe that biblical Christian beliefs are extremist, they're dangerous, they're bad, they're evil, they must be eradicated. And that is still seen throughout our military. Listen, I was just on the phone today with a military officer who's facing persecution and prosecution simply because someone asked him about his Catholic faith and he answered truthfully about the beliefs, the traditional beliefs of his church. Why? Why would he be disciplined for simply answering questions about his faith? Because military leaders, mid-level leaders, mid-level bureaucrats have been indoctrinated into believing those traditional American ideals are somehow evil and wrong. And listen, this is the next phase of the communist plot to take over the world. And I'm not trying to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but our own nation, our own schools, our own government has been infiltrated by secular humanists who believe in these communist principles. They believe in things like CRT and these other principles. And you can follow the history on that. And they are destroying our nation, and they've destroyed in many respects our military, and we have to build it back. So that's why something like living for leadership matters. That's why some of the efforts that are being made by President Trump, by Secretary Hegseth are so important, because there's a recognition in our military now that there are basic fundamental principles that we have abandoned as a nation, and we have succumbed to communism. That's why Matt Lohmeier's appointment as Assistant Secretary of the Air Force is so critical, because the principles in this book are how he lives his life. It's why he risked his career to take a stand and write a book about communist infiltration and principles in our military. And it's time that we step forward. It's time for people serving in the military, and those with the potential to serve, to embrace the principles that are outlined in this book and understand what it takes. And like we said yesterday, to make the choice to be a bum or to be a hero. So again, thank you so much for watching this series. Please give us feedback on what you think. Give us some ideas on the next series you'd like us to do. We look forward to interacting with you further. God bless. Take care.